Welcome to the Bloomfield Township Board of Trustees study session on Monday, March the 9th. If we'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everyone. Looks like we have some familiar faces in the crowd. First item is our public comment. If you're here to make a public comment, I'll come up to the podium, but it doesn't look like we'll have much public comment unless you're, sir, are you up for public comment tonight? Okay, so we'll move past and close public comment and open up number 2, discussing concerning water and sewer rates for 2026-27, presented by Noah Mehalski, our Director of Department of Public Works. Welcome, Noah.
Thank you very much. Wanted to give you an intro of what we've been working on for the rates, kind of frame out the April timeframe for setting the rates this year, and then also frame out the next kind of year, because there'll be some big changes that we have all talked about in the last few years that'll be coming to fruition in the next couple of years. So one thing is I'll have Raph tell us speak in a little bit once I do a little bit of an intro, but they are on the call, and they will be here when we start to talk more about the progress we're making on the rate study and the transitional items that we're looking at as far as changing how we calculate the rates. So first, I thought it'd be, you guys are veterans at this point, but I wanted to give you some of the kind of, basics about our system. One is we're irrigation heavy, so that makes the impact of weather even bigger and a driver of our rates than your average community. Our usage, also it's an industry trend, our usage is declining and the costs are increasing. Additionally, we have some, actually that's an old number on there as far as sewer-only customers, so about 209 of those customers have been switched over to the Township water system. That's part of the South Bloomfield Highlands project. So we're down to like 141 on sewer-only customers. Then we have about 2,600 water-only customers where sewer is not available within the township. Additionally, we're largely residential, so there's not a business or an industrial component of our users that we can couch costs with. In a lot of other communities, they force the higher costs to the industrial or the business users. We don't have that user base here within the township. So you guys have seen this before, but calculating rates is kind of a simple exercise. It's your cost or your needed revenue requirement over the amount of water you believe you're gonna sell, right? And then things get more complicated by volumes after that. So it's an exercise of forecasting our revenues, determining the costs for the next fiscal year. Our reserve policy comes into play there, whereas if we've over collected in the previous year, we add to the reserves and then we can decide what to do with that. Also, we have fixed costs from the system. And we have a fixed rate as well, which covers approximately 21% currently, and then we proportionalize that rate based on the MEU. So you guys, those should be all familiar things to you. Then we have variable costs. These costs are diminishing as a component of our rate. Our sewer costs are billed at 100% fixed. Right now, it's about 25% fixed on the water end, but they're looking to go to 50% fixed rate as a component. But then we have the variable, and then what we're gonna talk about this year and implement next year is a uniform rate, flat fee, tiered rate, fully burdened tiered rate. That's where you guys are gonna have some homework to learn what those terms mean through our expertise or through your own research, and then also being the conduit to what the residents are saying out there and asking for. So as far as the rate study, it's ongoing. I looked at our original rate study and the delivery date was May 17th. We are under a tighter timeline, but we've kind of opened that up because of the tasks that we're gonna undertake. So one question was to look at our supplier and make sure that we're getting the right type of rate. And that's from looking at other suppliers, that's looking at finding our own source of water. What would that look like compared to Great Lakes Water or Saukwa right now? Additionally, there was a wastewater treatment plant question, where would it be more economical for us to build a plant in the township or find another treater of sewage? Additionally, monthly billing was a priority, a tiered rate, and then looking at the ready-to-serve charge as part of that component of the rate. So what we're gonna do, the implementation of the tiered rate, we've been advised by the consultant who's on the phone, I'll have him speak to this a little bit later. We want to implement the monthly billing before we implement the tiered rate, so we don't have that kind of sticker shock of the tiered rate for the higher tier customers. Additionally, it'll kind of soften that move, and we've had a software change for BSNA, and we're not ready to go to monthly billing at this point. So we're looking for a July timeframe to gear up and go to monthly billing, then implement the actual tiered rate after I get feedback from the board and from the residents in April of '27. So we'd be in effect looking at a maintenance update to the rate for April of this year. So that's kind of the, we'll get the answers on the supplier, the wastewater treatment plant will get the implementation of the tier, or the monthly billing in place, then we'll get the tiered rate figured out kind of by April of 2027. So, things we have to consider both this year and for the tiered rate going forward, right? SACWA, I got the letter, these are all estimates at this time. Their budget year doesn't start until July. So again, when I called, so 8.5% is the estimate from SACWA right now. WRC, I called them and they had just gotten out of the meetings the day before that will set our rates. So I say that they're very early on in their rate making process, but they gave me their best bets were 8.5% and 6% increases coming. So additionally, implementation of that monthly billing and the costs involved with that, considering those, the extra work involved with that, and kind of getting the utility billing program up and running to where we can kind of facilitate that. Evaluation of a tiered rate. This is again a critical item. We're looking, you know, we would write the book on this, right? From the township's perspective. We've been recommended by Raftellus, you don't go crazy, you can't have like 10 or 11 tiers, because that's kind of like getting cute, right? And to split it into 10 or 11 tiers really doesn't make sense from a user perspective. And we gotta remember, we're kind of driving two things. Costs, that the residents are in the driver's seat on their costs. Consumption drives the cost. Additionally, a base amount of usage. Like what do we estimate that a family of four or the average house in Bloomfield Township will use? And then you become a lower user and an upper user, right? We're trying to distinguish between the water necessary for life and bathing versus discretionary use water, right? And so the tiered rate will bring that out. It's very similar to like how DTE does their tiered rate. And again, the book is open, we can drive this discussion any way we want. But tiered rate kind of puts you're either a low user or a high user, and you're a low user until you become a high user. So we would set, based on our own data, what we would think a typical, you know, amount of usage for the average family would be, and then if you're above that, you pay a higher rate, right? So basically your discretionary use would be at that higher rate. And again, there's two things. You're in control of the costs, but you're also trying to drive conservation as well, right? Where if you're in control, you can advocate for using more water or less, you're gonna use less to save money. That's the thought pattern. Again, evaluating the impact of storage on the rates. Ready to serve fee is a proportion of the rate, right? Right now, we're funding right around 21%. Within our rate, about 21% of our costs are fixed fee. They're satisfied by the fixed fee, and the remaining portion of the rate satisfies everything else. Again, that discretionary usage, or decreasing usage, these are industry things, right? Where the usage is going down, that's an industry trend, and costs are increasing. So when are water rates ever gonna go down? Probably never. We also have a strong capital building program, which is an investment in the system. And we do that, I mean, they're gonna speak at today's meeting about how our very strong capital improvement program, that takes money, and that comes into play with the rate. Also, our reserve levels and policies, right? If we feel like we can go down in our reserve amount, that can augment the amount that we have in the rate as well. So, again, you can mitigate a rate increase by using reserve funding to some extent. At this point, I want to turn over to Colin and Raftelis. And Tom, I guess you guys can kind of reiterate the kind of high points that I've had or add in any other flavor. I'll go on to the last slide because it's kind of your homework. And then everybody can see that. Colin or Tom?
Sure, yeah. Happy to jump in. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Sir, yes.
Okay. So Noah's kind of framed out some considerations here when it comes to the rate, just based on discussions we've had to this point, in terms of what is important to the township. I mean, to maybe back up just a second and give a really high-level overview, there's sort of a three-step process that we go through to determine a rate. One is, what's the overall level of revenue that we need to run the water and sewer utility? So it's sort of what's the size of the pie that we need to split up among the various types of users and rates? So there's just an overall amount of revenue. I think right now we have about $32 million in revenue budgeted for next year, if I'm remembering that correctly. So just what does that need to be to continue to operate the utility? And that's going to be a function of a lot of the factors that Noah mentioned, projections of our internal operating expenses as well as those of our suppliers. And then on the capital side, funding for capital improvement projects to maintain our distribution and collection system that ultimately goes to those regional suppliers. So that's the sort of size of the pie. And the second step is to determine what proportion of that goes to different types of users, whether it's residential, commercial, as well as looking at how you recover that, be it via a fixed charge or a volume charge. So that's sort of, once you've determined what that overall need is, it's really about how do your policies inform how you split that pie up from a cost recovery perspective. So when we talk about rate structure, we're really focusing on how we recover that overall level of revenue. The past few years, we've been making more or less equal adjustments to the rates to meet that overall funding need. And now we're digging back into how does that get recovered among the various types of users. So Noah's sort of highlighted some considerations here that relate to the structure. So if you think about, the simplest thing you could do is take the overall cost and divide by the number of users. And it'd be a cost per month that everyone would pay. And that would be the same no matter how much you use. On the flip side, you could make it all volumetric and it would be totally based on usage. And then there are options in the middle. And then even within that fixed versus variable cost recovery, there are options. So on a fixed fee, you could charge everyone the same, or you could do what we do here, which is recognize, have higher charges for customers with larger water meters. And then on the volume side, something we haven't done, but that there's interest in exploring is this tiered rate option, which is charging a higher unit rate as your usage passes certain thresholds. So say the first 5,000 gallons might be at, and I'm just making up numbers here, at $1, and the next 5 to 10 might be at $1.50, and then everything over 10 might be, $2. And when you think about why or how you might structure that tiered rate, generally what you're getting at is trying to differentiate between indoor sort of essential usage and then outdoor discretionary usage. So when we set tiers in a tiered rate, sort of like we're considering here, those cutoffs are really designed to charge a lower unit rate for indoor usage, which is more consistent, but also considered less discretionary. So things for like washing clothes, washing dishes, that sort of thing. And then when you get above into that next tier, you're really getting into the outdoor, more discretionary, more seasonal, but also a bigger driver of our peaking costs. And then if you were to go to a third tier, it might be even higher. Maybe say it's the top 10 to 25% of users in terms of that seasonal usage. So those are some considerations on the tiered structure. We've identified some other questions on the fixed fee. I know that was a big focus last time as well, just overall level of fixed revenue, and as well as do we proportion it relative to meter size or some other basis. The only thing I'd add on that is, if you think about fixed revenues, we actually have a decent amount of our variable revenue that probably isn't going to fluctuate all that much, and that's the amount that people use indoors. So even though technically on a per quarter basis we have a certain amount of fixed revenue recovery, there's a certain amount of the volume revenue that's not going to go away because people's usage is not going to go to zero, even if it fluctuates depending on the summer weather or over time it goes down some. There'll always be a base level of usage there. So the idea beyond answering any questions was really just to get everyone's perspective and what you've been hearing from residents in terms of what's important for the rates in terms of fixed versus variable, tiered rates, overall level, just questions you're getting, just so that we can kind of take all of that feedback as we bring forward proposals, but also as we offer explanation for what those proposals are, just to make sure that we're answering the questions and that we're evaluating within the scope that's identified for this project, that we're digging into the things that are important to the township. So I'll leave it there and just open it up for questions, discussion, but it's really just an opportunity to get feedback before we really start digging in earnest on the structuring side.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. And I wanted to frame a couple more things before we kind of talk, and I'll walk through these questions and why they're on there. Additionally, I'll just remind everyone that the last rate study, we did talk to the residents, and their top three kind of priorities for water rate setting were stability of rate, lower rate, obviously, and then to be in the driver's seat. Those were kind of, again, in a tiered rate or a variable-based rate. So those were the main things. Now, we're looking at doing a maintenance increase for the rate this year, and it's a special circumstance because last year we were able to spend down the reserves that we were accessing our reserves. Corey and his team and also the meter program was able to spend down those reserves, but we did have the irrigation months crept into September and October, and so any money we spent out of the reserves, we gained it right back in extra irrigation months, right? So that excess in the reserves allows us to maybe consider a 0% rate increase this year as a maintenance increase, and or up to 3 or 5%, right? We can augment the rates that are being quoted to us by our suppliers by that reserve amount. Additionally, Corey and them are still doing a lot of work next year, but the meter program is winding down, and we're not gonna need reserve funding to finish out the meter program. So that allows us to use that reserve to the amount that we're comfortable to augment the rate increase that we're seeing. So then it's, what are your priorities, right? And we're getting at, this is the stability of rate, being in the driver's seat. What do you guys feel are your top 3 or 4 priorities when it comes to rate setting? Is it, do you not care if the water system is down 50 days a year? We want to save that $3 million in CIP money and take it right off the rate. We don't care if there's, it's a less reliable water system, right? That's an extreme example, but that's definitely, do you support a capital improvement project or not, right? That's what that comes down to. What's the resident sentiment? What have you guys been hearing out there? We're gonna gather that data from the residents as well and get that sentiment, but you guys are also the voice and ear for the township residents, so what are you hearing out there? Additionally, ask them why, right? Why do you think water rates are too high? What leads you to believe that? Where's your data coming from? The research that we've done overall, most of the rates are right about the same. People just kind of cut the rate a little different. And again, I use my example down there in Parma. Some people just do a flat fee, and we don't think that's the proper way to do it. But you guys are that pipeline for that. Clearly people call me as well and talk about rates, but you guys are out there, 7 more eyes and ears out there. Your idea for a tiered rate structure. Colin walked through a paradigm that had up to like 3 tiers or so. Again, there's that baseline usage that I think we all would we don't want to penalize those people for the baseline usage. Then there's gonna be maybe this middle group that are your higher irrigators that pay a little bit more, and then maybe break it into a, high-end exorbitant use. I've got my wine cellar in the basement that uses water to cool it, and so I have $32,000 water bills per quarter that exist in our system. So those type of things. And how is that tiered structure gonna impact usage among the residents? What percentage of the revenue should be generated from the ready to serve? This is another thing that we can kind of play with, right? Our sewer costs are completely fixed, 100%. Our water costs right now are 25% fixed, 75% variable. They're looking at going to 50%. So how much should we support the ready to serve as a component of the rate? That's common among, there's been a long history at the township. Neil, you probably have been here from when it was 0% in the ready to serve, and it got slowly built up as we reacted to our suppliers increasing the ready to serve, and as we had needed the hills and valleys money as well to kind of get through the operational stuff. But what level of support do we want? Do we want to take the risk of putting the fixed fee money over into the variable fee? Because that would represent a risk. If we under collect, we would have to basically ensure that we collected the right at net zero, right? Because we can't run a deficit, especially if there's no reserves. So, MEU, is this still a good way to proportionalize the costs? Before we went to MEU, basically every resident paid the same. Is that equitable? Is the MEU structure more equitable? Is it not? Do we have a fully burdened tiered rate where you remove that proportionalization, but you take on some risk as part of the system? Excuse me. What level of support should we have for a CIP project? We've got large projects coming up on Maple Road, Lasher, very expensive. Do we hold back 10 years on doing those projects? Or do we move forward, use our reserves and use our rate-funded CIP money to do those projects now and attack them now, right? That's a decision that we can make. We'll have impacts on the level of service, all those things. Any other considerations that you may be aware of that I'm not, right? I want you guys to make sure you bring those to the table so they can be considered. And then we can, this is the time to affect that change. That's another reason why we want to kind of make sure this process is slow and methodical. We give you guys the opportunity to think about these things, dream the big dreams, right? And then I can kill the hope and tell you why things are done the way they are. Or, obviously, new ideas are great, things for everyone. I believe that personally within my department. So I think new things, there's some risk involved with new things, but we can, it's our car to do what we wish with at this point. So, if anyone has any questions for me, if you'd like to share your opinions, and I will thank Michael and Chris. They've been involved on a few meetings so far, 3 meetings I think we've had with Raftelis, with that group. So thank you guys for your efforts there. They're gonna be on the front line involved as we go through this. I see, getting the information from the public and then us getting back in more of like a workshop atmosphere in October timeframe to really talk about the tiered rate, how that looks. So between now and then, reach out to me. Let's have those discussions. Right now, this is the time, right? I don't know what you're thinking if you don't say what you're thinking. So, and neither do the residents and the constituents, so this is the time.
Thank you, Noah. Any questions for Noah?
I have a couple comments. As you know, I've always been a big proponent of making sure that we have the sufficient assets for capital improvements for our structures underneath the ground. I mean, that's the most important part of everything, is that it works and does what it's supposed to do without the major water main breaks like we just experienced this past weekend in Novi in Detroit, right? So that's number one. Without that, we're not going to have water. The other part, as far as I'm concerned, I'm less interested in the tier rate system and more interested in just straight usage. Not necessarily everybody the same rate. We can talk about that, but usage is really important. Just charge people for what they use. Straightforward, simple as that. If somebody doesn't use a lot of water, then they're going to obviously be charged a lot less than the person with the wine cellar using getting a $32,000 bill on a quarter. So the tier rate doesn't really excite me, that whole structure. I'd like to try and make it as simple as possible for the residents so they understand it, and they could not feel like they're not being treated fairly.
I have a question when you're set. I know one of the heavy uses is seasonal and irrigation, and that happens a lot in the township. And I know that part of that was getting the other meters to save money, to not pay for sewer. On the other side of that is, though, there are heavy users for irrigation. So what are the thoughts in terms of, is that going to be a separate rate, or is that going to be, again, a usage-based rate, or?
Yeah, I mean, the way I'm leaning in my mind right now is, which obviously there's a lot of discussion, would be to make that distinction. We would again have like your baseline usage for, again, just the washing clothes, washing your body, drinking. Then anything above that would be an irrigation type rate. And we have a ready-made example of that because in the winter, we're not irrigating here. So we can determine, it'll be a Bloomfield Township rate too, as far as, it won't be like the EPA estimate for a family of 4 in your average US home. It'll be like a Bloomfield Township rate. That's the importance of us having our own, data on our usage. And then, again, what's the penalty or the surplus charge for going into that irrigation? I don't know. That's kind of how we need to discuss. And maybe it's only kind of that one distinction between a base level user and an irrigative user, right? And that's the only tier you have.
Well, or a home use versus a business use
Right.
versus an irrigation use.
Yep, and
You
those.
said not too many tiers
Right.
or it gets confusing.
But and that's even, we have an industrial rate, they have different components of that rate, so even an industrial difference in the tier is, you don't need to get too cute with industrial because we just don't have the base for it here. So it's not gonna impact your other rates very much, so it's the problem with.
I have heard from one resident, actually the one that enlightened me about their toilet leak, and then we went home and found out we had the same problem at our house, and it was draining us 1.5 gallons an hour or a day.
It adds up, and that's part of the new meters, the ion water, people have been very happy when they've caught a leak.
We've
So-
caught two. So I am an advocate for ion water. I've told many people about it. But the person who actually enlightened us, because I knew about it, I just hadn't done it. They are very concerned about the water costs and the water usage to the point that when we've run into them, like at the gym, they shower at the gym to try and keep their water bill down. Everybody can make their own choices, but that's a specific resident that has talked to me.
I mean, and that makes good fiscal sense, because they're already paying for the water at the gym, really. So, I don't know if I'd like to be the one forcing them to do that, but it's prudent. They're already paying for it.
It was an interesting thing, because we were heading out, and they go, well, we're going back to shower, and we're like, we kind of
Oh,
just
I
wanted to go
don't know if
home.
I'd go there just to shower. I don't think the gas,
No.
depending on where you live, I don't know
Well,
if
no,
the
they
gas
had-
economics.
They had done a class.
Gas is a lot more expensive than water.
Right,
so,
no, they had done a class, but
unfortunately.
we didn't feel like,
Close, though.
we were gonna go back in and shower to save the water. It's
Right,
like,
right. Huh,
I like my
interesting.
shower at home, frankly.
So, Noah, I know Gliwa they're setting a higher rate, right, for water and sewer right now?
Yeah,
And what is it they pass down?
anywhere from 5 to 10%, depending on who you are and how far you are away from the plant.
Right, which affects our rates.
Correct.
Right?
And they're not final. They come out with a draft final rate, and then you see all the newspaper articles, people start getting up in arms, and then they come out with, it's probably gonna be 1 or 2 percentage points lower than that. So,
And last year, what did they pass on
it
last
was
year?
like 7. 7 or 5.
For water and sewer?
Right, I think they might have been 7 at first, and then the outroar, or uproar
Came down,
happened,
came
and they
down a
came
little
down to
bit.
5.
And then what is it this year? What was the proposed rate this year, water and
Eight
sewer?
and a half.
And then what was sewer?
5.5.
5.5?
I thought you said
Right.
6, but yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I got 6, yep.
And then, I know, Novi's had a lot of problems with their water mains, and those are Gliwa water mains, I understand.
It was a transmission main along 14 Mile. It serves us too.
Right, it affected our pressure system, right?
It affected our pressures, but we were hit, the main was closer to our community like 4 years ago when it broke.
Right.
And that one did impact us. We had a blip of low pressure between 2 and 5 a.m. So luckily, we were all sleeping,
Yeah.
except for me and my water staff. We were all sleeping, so we didn't have a high usage, and it didn't drop below regulatory levels. So we popped right back up. We were
So we'd
low
have to
for a
test the
day.
water. We didn't have to worry
Nope,
about testing
and
the
didn't
water.
have to do a 2-day shutdown and testing and all that and a boil water.
Right.
So we were just far enough away from the break that it didn't impact us. West Bloomfield had impacts.
I saw that
Walled
one over
Lake,
the
Novi,
weekend.
all had, yeah, you know, the mall was closed. They were bringing in porta potties to the suburban show place, or Vibe show
Vibe
place.
showcase,
Yeah. So it was well,
And they got to
teaches
do it
you the
now.
value of water.
Right, because now they have to wait, even though it's coming up, to test the water.
Correct.
And then over the weekend, West Bloomfield had another big water main, and I saw pictures, it was like water all over
Yep.
the
Yeah, it was right near me.
surface,
Yeah.
was it?
But I did read
Just
that
on
we
the
didn't
end,
have
just
a
far
boil
enough
water.
away where it didn't impact us.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you've kept me now on the link, and I appreciate you and your team, about all the water mains. It's almost been weekly, we've had water main breaks going on. And-
Last week was the first 7-day period that we didn't have a water main break all winter.
Yeah.
So,
And
which
what,
is still good for the system.
and these water mains are older, right? And then the ground's shifting because of the change in
Freeze-thaw
temperature.
cycles.
And that's what's contributing to all these breaks that we're having, right?
Now, Great Lakes water, that's a whole different set of circumstances down there. That's a 42-inch pipe. It's a material that has defects that are known to it, so that's a little bit different case than our
Okay.
cases up here. That one might have happened anyway, even without the freeze and thaw, but
Because of the
maybe.
material that was used.
Yeah, and just the age of the pipe and just the material. So,
And there's a lot of that from the Detroit water system because of the age of the system that wasn't maintained properly through the years.
correct. But we're in a better state than the city of Detroit, because at least, you know, the stuff in the city of Detroit was built first. Then they started building out into the suburbs, so our stuff's newer, relatively newer than theirs.
And on that material you're talking about, do any of our water mains, you know, have that material?
We
that's used?
have a few, like, but we've looked at them and they aren't in the same state as those pipes.
Okay.
So, and they're not as big. They are our transmission mains, but, so we do have that pipe, but we're, on top of it better as far as inspections, and they're just starting to inspect that pipe because of the breaks that happened 4 and 5 years ago.
Okay.
Actually, our ex-engineering director is one working on that job over at Great Lakes Water right now. So,
Right.
yeah, so.
So with those mains that we have of that material, is there a plan to replace those at some point?
Yep, there's a study being conducted in the next 3 or 4, part of our capital improvement plan is doing a study of those. And so, it's concrete and it's got metal wire within it, and that wire actually gives it the strength, but that wire snaps over time and breaks, and so you can send sound waves through the pipe and tell how many of those wires are broke, and then if there's over a certain amount of percentage of wires broke, the pipe has got a major defect. So there are ways to determine the quality of the pipe in the ground, and we're on the precipice of beginning that transmission main. What we did in the beginning, capital improvement projects from like 2000 until now, we focused on the neighborhood pipes. Now it's the backbones, and that's why the Maple Road pipe, you know, that's a backbone of our system. Lasher Road, that type of thing.
Well, no, I think you know, in my sub, we've had 2 water main breaks across the street from my house since we've lived here. The one happened in the summer, blew out a section of the road, and we called, and they came out and reduced the water flow, but kept it on until they came, and they came in the morning. I mean, I'm so grateful, sorry about Detroit, but that we handle things. The second time, we were actually out of the country, and it was winter. And I
was there for
called,
that one.
I heard about it. I
was a
heard about it.
geyser.
I called, and that's what I heard. He said, oh, it was like a really great geyser. It's one of the best ones I've seen. We got home at night and couldn't tell, but in the morning, everything, there's a pond across from us, it's not built on. everything was encased in ice. And the neighbor said that they had bulldozers going up and down in front of my house, because it was literally across from us, to get the water out of the road so that it didn't freeze, because it was so cold when we got home. Everything was iced, but it was dark, we couldn't see. And the next morning I went, okay, what happened over there?
Yeah, it was shooting 50 or 60 feet out of the ground there. so,
That's what he told me when I called. The water department was great, and like I said, they took care of it the next day on both occasions, so it makes me appreciate everything you and your department does.
Thank you.
I quickly echo that. I mean, you know, your team is on call a lot, and do make very frequent after-hours responses to, you know, continue providing great, you know, water and sewer services to the township. So kudos to the entire team. Quick question, when we talk about tiers, just so I'm clear in my mind, let's, you know, an example, it's like marginal, right? So that, you know, it might be $1 for the first 100 gallons, and then it's $2 for 100 to 200, and then $300 for $3 for, like, you know, 300 to up. Right, it's not like, it doesn't all become $3 once you get to 300 gallons.
No, but we
You'll
are in the
pay
driver's seat. So
You
literally,
could be, I guess, so.
we literally could make it like that. We have like Colin said, we have the same pie. It's how big of a bites are we taking out of it?
Yeah.
Right, and so if we feel like that value to the system is, and we have to meet the revenue requirement. So however less you wanna make the lower people pay, the top people are paying more. So there's this teeter-totter, this inverse relationship that goes on there too. But certainly, there could be that much of a variance. I don't see that being the case, but certainly the bigger the variance, the bigger the propensity to have you change your activities with the water.
Right. So, 3 tiers have been discussed. We could do any number of tiers, but sort of one other tier I think about are the folks that are seasonal residents here. So, you know, the family of 4 use would be X, but the seasonal tend to be, you know, empty nesters, and it's even lower.
Well, then
So
then
it may
the
even be a
commodity
4th
rate
tier.
would take over in that case, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you really wanna benefit those people, right, and this isn't my idea or anything, but a fully burdened tiered rate, so you don't have any ready to serve as part of that, right? That's, cause you're not gonna eliminate the current structure, you're not gonna eliminate with the tiers that ready to serve down. So if that's the portion you wanna attack, but I think there's good logic to the fact that even when people are down in Florida, you're still protected by a water system. Because if your house burns down, they're not gonna say, well, they're in Florida, let's just let it go, right?
Right.
And additionally, your house, you don't physically disconnect the water when you leave for Florida each year. So there is either, I don't know if even people turn it off, I mean, we get a lot of calls where their basements and that are being flooded. So anecdotally, no, but that would be the driver then, you know, and they should realize a lower cost simply by their usage, so. But we are taking on more of a risk with a fully burdened rate. And when you think of risk for a water system, you mitigate risk with conservative planning. So maybe you have to think, okay, we're gonna sell less water then, right? Cause we can't run at a deficit here in the water department.
Right.
Can't
So,
go out of
yeah,
business.
Over the years, my thoughts about the ready to serve and what portion it should carry has changed. And, you know, presently, I think that the ready to serve is an important component, and it needs to be a significant component. Mostly because I really think that the building and operating and maintenance of this infrastructure is a community project that we all share in, regardless of usage. And so I would definitely support a healthy percentage that's just a fixed amount. I do like tiers too. I do like the idea of, you know, the super higher users, you know, paying more for that higher amount. And as Neil mentioned, you know, the heart of all of this is the capital improvement project and the money that we continue to invest. I see that as just, you know, because current taxes being paid to maintain the system currently versus, you know, if we reduce that, we're just kicking the can down the road, we're making future taxpayers really carry the burden of something we should have paid for today.
Right.
So, yeah, those are a couple thoughts I have off the top of my head. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So, a couple things I have the similar thoughts to both trustee Barnett as well as
Clerk Brooke on capital improvements. I think that is not something we should be kicking the can down the road. The cheapest time to be putting something in the ground is right now. Construction costs are going up a lot higher than our tax rate is, or some of these other rates. So if we invest in it now, all it does is it actually saves taxpayer money long-term. And as we talk about people wanting to use water and the assets associated with it, the best time to invest in it is right now. So I don't want any plan in which we're kicking that can down the road. I think that is just short-sightedness, and that's not what we're here about. It's long-term visibility. Neil's been on the board for 20 years and 24, am I right? So, but the reason that we continue to have a good water department is because we've been investing in it for 24 years. We don't kick the can down the road for political reasons or to get reelected. It is about making sure it's good for generations. So I want to continue that. Because of the fact that we have, our water rates are a lot of times tied to big water usage, and we have on our thirstiest day of our thirstiest month, I do think where the tiers come in is to kind of make those people pay their fair share, but making sure that the family of four or those fixed income people can drive their rate, can determine how much they want their bill to be. So that's kind of where I see those to be. So similar to what you said and echoing some of our senior people here on the board. Thank you.
What's he calling senior people?
Yeah.
Tenured, excuse me.
You're looking at this end of the board, so what are you
More
saying?
newer, your tenure, your experience.
I like that. Tenured and experienced, good.
I've got a question about monthly billing. Currently, water and sewer is charged central services fees, and they bill quarterly. The charge related to billing is $177,000 a year. Going to monthly billing, what will be those new charges?
I'll have to ask Jason. They do the central services. I'll have to wait for the report. I don't know the answer to that, how they will basically. I know they have the report, then our amount we need to give per year is in that report, and then they split it up. I assume he'll be taking it then out in 12-month installments or 12 monthly installments, but I don't know that.
But you're doing more work, and instead of doing it 4 times a year, we're now doing it 12. So I'm expecting those rates to go up, and then we have to explain to our residents that we increased rates because we went to monthly billing, because we have more costs coming in for central services.
No, central services that the water department pays is for like the township supervisor's time, the accounting department's time.
HR.
So, our handling of more transactions will not augment that, and if
I've
anything,
looked
ours
at-
will go
I've
down.
looked at it, there's a $177,000 charge
Yeah, I get,
for collecting water and sewer rate fees and doing the billing in the central service calculation. You are saying we're gonna go from 4 months to 12 months. That I'm expecting to triple. And I don't, well, if it's not going to triple, what will it be?
So, 2 things. Number one, the water department does the billing, not the treasurer's office. The treasurer's office just collects. They do the billing, and we are already billing 12 months of the year. We are just billing 1/3 of the customers each month, so that each third gets billed 4 times a year, but we are going through the process of billing 12 months out of the year. So whether you bill 1/3 of the customers or all of the customers in a given month, the marginal cost is going to be minimal, and most of it's going to be borne by the water department already, because they're the ones that do the billing.
and there's
So
a
because-
postage line item.
So the cost to do the billing is gonna go up, and we're going to charge our customers higher rates because we're billing once a month instead of billing once every 4 months.
Yes, there's a cost to that, and the
Yes,
department
and so
will bear
our
it.
rates are going up because we're gonna go from quarterly bills to monthly bills.
Whether or not rates go up is another decision,
But the
but-
cost.
The cost
The
is
biggest
going
cost,
up,
the biggest cost is gonna be the postage.
and we are,
The cost of the billing and the collecting is not going to change dramatically because it's already done 12 months out of the year.
What about the new BSA online? Can we do?
Yes, we are always encouraging customers to get an e-bill instead of a paper bill. So
Right.
we encourage people to get an e-bill. We also encourage people to pay online or to
Right.
set up an auto pay.
Well, maybe we would have something where if you, a lot of businesses do it, where you say, if you want a monthly bill mailed to your house every month, but if you're willing to do online with like an
We
email
could do that.
reminder, maybe you save a couple bucks or
Yeah,
something.
we could certainly
Because
do
that would, I mean, postage is, like you said, postage is gonna be a big part
We're
of that.
increasing expenses. NOAA has confirmed we're increasing expenses. We don't need to increase those expenses on our rate providers, just because we want to go to monthly billing.
Not
On
necessarily
that,
we, I mean,
I-
this is a question that comes up from a lot of people that want monthly
Want
billing, they don't want quarterly billing.
I think
So
there's
it's
strong
a response
support
to resident demand too. So
So
the question is
let
whether we
them-
do it or not.
they can
It's
pay
not
more
just
for
about,
monthly
you know,
billing.
convenience for us.
The people that want quarterly can pay less.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, so the driver of the monthly billing isn't the board, it is resident response. So as that, when we come up with the reasons of why, they've asked us to do that, that was a feedback. I want to be
Strong
able to control my bill,
support for
or I want to be
monthly
able to factor it. That's the reason we're doing it. So
That
if
was
our
part of
residents
the-
tell us they want to do something, even if it drives costs, whatever that dollar amount is, that's what we're supposed to do, we're here to represent them.
I have not heard of one person asking to pay more money so I can pay monthly. I have not heard one person ask me
We did
for
a
that.
study, Martin, 3-4 years ago, and invited the public, and people wanted the monthly billing because what Noah explained is that they bill people a chunk of the residents every quarter, okay, every month. Every month, a third. So in January, a third of the residents get a bill, in February, a third of the residents get. So we're all on different cycles, but we're all getting bills, they're keeping track of our usage every day.
So the volume will increase, which means the expenses are going to increase and rates are going to go up because of the human resource side and the processing of the billing, period. Period.
No.
Well, the
Unless we go
rate
to
is
online.
separate, but monthly billing will add extra cost.
Monthly billing
the
will add
department.
extra cost to the bottom line to residents.
The bulk of it would be postage.
Yes.
It's still going up.
And I like the idea, by the way, of potentially saying, well, there's a little savings if people sign up for online stuff. I get solicited by that all the time, constantly, and
And-
just save money with my Verizon bill.
And it goes back to what people have said, and similar to what you said, Neil, is be able to drive they have the ability to drive their bill and actually save money. It gives them more opportunity, and it's very simple.
What will happen with the extra cash that becomes available when you go to monthly billing?
It's still paying for the commodity, so it basically, we're gonna have to determine what that hills and valleys money, what's required into the future, but we'll spend down to the reserves to the amount that we feel comfortable. Right now, we keep in reserves O&M money to cover the hills and valleys.
Correct.
If you're
And
collecting every month,
if you're collecting every month, it's gonna go down quite a bit.
theoretically, we should go down to some other level, and then we'll spend the reserves down to that level.
What's the expectation, since we are billing right now?
The
monthly?
expectations of how much that can be lowered, I don't
Yes.
know. We haven't even set the tiered rate, we haven't looked, if we have no, it depends on the components of the rate and things like that, so,
What, do we receive tiered rates from SACWA?
no.
So that means that the rates, tiered rate that we're gonna charge are not gonna be consistent what the township is being billed.
Well, yeah, each community that's part of SACWA is charged an individual rate.
Correct, and it doesn't vary based on time of the year, does it?
Well, it takes into account time, day, peak hour, so yes, certainly does, if we're a high irrigation.
Do they give you one rate? Or do
Yes.
they give you two
They
rates?
take a rate that
they give you
encompasses
a-
all.
do
One
you-
rate, well, actually two, a ready to serve and a variable.
Okay, so there is no tiered rate for usage from SACWA
Correct.
that the township can identify and match up with the rates we're charging. That
Well,
becomes a problem.
they're charging on a different unit, which is different, it's a different
I
animal
am-
from a supplier standpoint.
Look, that becomes a math problem. It's chemistry 101. We all talk about units in chemistry in high school. It's not a difficult problem. My concern is if we are not getting tiered rates from SACWA or the water provider, then why would we charge a tiered rate to our customers?
Because we know about our residents and what their usage is. SACWA doesn't. So they wouldn't be able to set a tiered rate. They don't know what our high users are versus our middle versus
But
our
we
low.
are not getting charged for water
Yes.
based on a tiered rate from
Like I said,
SACWA.
we buy a pie and we decide how that pie is gonna be cut up. SACWA
You buy
sells
a
us the
pie
pie.
that doesn't vary based on tier structure.
Right, we cut
Yes,
the
so
pie
we will
up.
be overcharging and undercharging some customers.
No,
But Mark, one
We'll
of the
set the
things
rate
you're
on our
not,
system.
you're not considering is that we're paying the capital improvement. So if Martin uses twice as much water as Neil, should they pay the same rate? Because he's putting more water through those pipes and we gotta replace those pipes when they break.
If that's the case, the engineers in the community, whenever they size our system, they always put in a portion of the cost that's needed to support public safety requirements and fire hydrants. We have not had a rate increase for maintaining the system to meet public safety requirements in a very long time. And if you're talking about that, then that's the same thing.
I'm not talking
And when
about
we
that.
when we have renters that are not paying property taxes, that should be paid by the owner, not the renter. Because that is part of a component. It's part of the component every time they come in here. Even back in August of 2013, when the engineers sized the connection to SACWA, they included the requirements for public safety. And that adds volume, whether it's used or not. And we keep hearing about potential to use, but those charges aren't going back to public safety.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Yes. Dirk Beckerleg, a couple years ago, Treasurer Sostak, at the time he was a trustee, he asked about reducing the minimum water consumption a year. And Dirk's response was, you have to have a fact basis for reducing it. And my questions are all tied to the fact basis. What's the fact basis to going to a tier structure if we do not have a requirement from SACWA to pay on a tier-based structure? If you cannot identify the savings, then that gets the township into trouble.
No,
That
it doesn't
also
get in
comes-
trouble, by the way. So there's how we set the rate, you know, what we get charged from SACWA, by the way, is tiered in a way because it is a specially designed rate just for us that takes in consideration our high peak usage times. It's not then tiered individually, but that tiering is considered in the specific rate we're charged. On top of that, how they charge us is not a factor that we have any obligation to consider in how we charge our residents.
Yes, it is,
You're
because
saying it's important to you, but
we're
this
using
board will
water.
decide how
We're
we
using
actually set
water.
that rate.
And we're putting in fancy meters and looking at the consumption. They have a meter in our connection, and they're charging a rate based on what we use, right?
And other factors.
And, well, then they should charge a tiered rate to us.
Oh, well, they don't have to charge a tiered rate to us.
Yes, but we are separate, and that rate should be tied to what the use that's actually happening. And because we aren't being charged extra and you can't calculate it out, then we shouldn't be charging tiered rates, period.
I disagree.
Disagree, too.
Lastly, OPEB. We are fully funded on OPEB. Will the rates include payments into the OPEB fund, either as contributions or benefits?
We're quantifying that question with the rate consultant right now, like if it were $100,000 in interest income that were transferred over from the general fund, what would that mean to the rate? And so we should be able to provide that data.
I asked about OPEB.
Right. and-
OPEB is fully funded. It has nothing to do with the interest rates on the cash.
Okay, so I
So
guess,
is that a fee being charged to us? It's $250,000 a year, and will that be included?
I
in
believe
the
there's
rates?
OPEB charges in there, yeah.
So there's no fact basis again, because Milliman, and I've heard this over and over again from Chris, he trusts the Milliman reports. And if the liability is fully funded, then that should not be there. My other concern is comments that were made in the meeting for the budget. If we're putting money in from water and sewer when the actuary doesn't require it, even if it is to cover benefit payouts, to keep the township off of a corrective action plan. For me, that's inappropriate. Lastly, thank you for making the comment on interest. You had $20 million in cash. That's at 4%. That's for $800,000. Lastly, regarding tiered rates, if we did actually have a tiered rate or even an evening rate from SACWA, then we could look at other opportunities for savings. We have a 1 million gallon storage facility, which we aren't buying water in the evening, even though Gliwa offers lower rates, and then letting it out into the township during the day. So we aren't doing that, and we're not getting a special rate for buying water at night.
Martin, do you have a comment?
Yeah, so Mark, I appreciate the OPEB questions you bring up, and we've heard them many times, and you're raising them again here today. And I mean, it's a great question. And I want to talk a little bit about, why I think we're doing the right thing and what the process is. So number one, there is no ADC that's been defined by Milliman for this current budget year, which ends March 31st. So there's no ADC next year. So water and sewer is not making a monetary contribution to the OPEB. The $1.25 million that the township put in this year, it goes into the trust. By the way, it's one trust that's legally compliant. Everybody's in it. Everybody puts money in it, and all the benefits are paid out of that one trust. But the $1.25 million that was scheduled this year comes from the general fund and public safety funds. And ultimately, we paid $2.5 million, as was authorized by this board, which comes from general fund and public safety fund. There wasn't any water and sewer funds that come, that make those payments.
The
Now,
benefit payments did go out, and
So,
when
let me
we
get to
get
that.
the report,
Let me get to that. I was about to get to that. So then your question is, so one, there's no money going into it from water and sewer. As a structure of the system, all current benefits are paid with current funds, whether it's public safety or general or cable or water and sewer. That it's being handled consistently throughout every department, that current benefits are paid through current funds. Why? Well, because the fund is so underfunded, we are working in a system, a place where we're trying to accumulate assets into the fund. And that process has been ongoing for now, well over a decade. We're making a really great progress. In fact, the corrective action plan, which we were under until just now, required us to make these contributions. The plan had two components. One was money from the current benefits were paid with current funds, and two, we were putting in at least $1.25 million every year. So that corrective action plan, which was approved by the state, required us to do that. Only this year, since we're not under the plan, could we possibly entertain a different policy decision. Only this year. So
well,
in the past, it had to be that way.
if that's the direction you want to take, water and sewer was paying in the benefit and an actuarially determined contribution. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, through 2025. And that was never required by water and sewer to pay that in. And what we found out was because of the calculations and how we could get out of that corrective action plan, that benefited the township. It did not benefit the ratepayers.
No, I disagree. I mean, you're right, that there were monies going into it. But
And
we
they were never
followed- we-
approved by the board, and they were not
followed-
included in the
We
corrective
followed
action
what
plan.
what Milliman has been saying, and when we can afford it, put in more. As been said, the trust is a single trust, it's not divided up, and to divide it up is a folly's, path. So, I think that where we're going is great. However, it is a good question, because sometime soon, we may want to look at this and do it differently. At some point soon, we're gonna hit the 40% rate, a funded rate, and at that point, it's probably a great time to think about, maybe we should be, using some of the trust fund to pay current benefits. And also, this fall, we'll get a new actuarial report, which will tell us where we are. And that's another great opportunity to look at this and decide what to do. But presently, the actuarial has no contribution for this year, and the overall practice is that all current benefits are paid from current assets because we're trying to build accumulations in the trust, which sadly weren't properly funded a long time ago. So we're in a bad spot because of that. But it's a conservative budgeting process, and we are making great progress on the overall value of the fund. And I did have a communication that went to me from our GASB folks that looked at this. And if we just simply took building and cable and water, we just took those and said, we're going to treat them differently than everybody else and pay those benefits from the trust, it would reduce our path to 40% and 100% funding by 10 to 15%, which means that's, again, an estimate based upon what's happening now. So that's a significant change, and I just don't think we want to compromise the path we're on to be conservatively and as quickly as possible, bring the OPEB trust fund into a funding level that's appropriate. So
How is a funding level for water and sewer over 100% funded inappropriate?
it's one trust. To look at it separately doesn't make any sense.
Well, then maybe we should consider removing the 3 fully funded trusts.
Well, that'll increase costs. It'll increase costs, which will increase rates, and we don't want to do that, right?
The
We will
the
lower our,
benefit
we'll
payments
lower our
are in
returns.
excess of $350,000 for those 3 funds. That's the benefit payment. So when you say it increased costs, what costs are actually going to go up?
What goes up is that by having smaller funds to invest, we'll get lower returns and higher investment fees. And lower returns means we have to increase our contributions of actual dollars. We'll have
It's
higher.
fully funded. We're
It's-
talking about the fully
It's
funded.
only momentarily fully funded. This is a prediction out many years of lots of variables. Right now, the market's going in a direction none of us like. That's going to change these funding ratios dramatically.
That's
And
what
if
got
we
us out
don't
of
be
the
conservative,
oversight.
And
then we're going to get ourselves another hole.
thank you for confirming that we overcharge water and sewer.
We do not
To pay
overcharge.
in the ADC when
we
it was
don't.
never
There
required.
is an
Don't make statements like that.
appropriate
That's not
charge.
the We're going off the
There's an
rails
appropriate
again.
charge
Did you have something
to
you wanted to
maintain
add?
the trust fund.
No, I just think we're done.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you, Noah.
Thanks, Noah.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Raftelis.
Thank you.
That's still there, okay. All right, so we'll move for adjournment, and we'll see you in a
I
half
would
hour.
make a motion
Oh,
that
okay.
we adjourn.
Go Val.
Thank you.
Study.
All in favor, say aye. Aye, good. Thank you.